That should do it. Hey. All right, guys. I am back for another go here. This time I'm solo. It's what, Sunday? I almost never work on a Sunday, but I feel like the weather's good and it'll let me get other stuff done during the week. So Armstrong Clark, probably one of my favorite products that you can get locally. I know some of you guys can get this. For us, we can only get this at a local paint store. I'd be curious if any big box stores carry Armstrong Clark. So some of the stuff, it's interesting reading the cans. Can be applied up to wood, can be applied to wood with up to 20% moisture. We're never going to apply stain, an oil-based stain, to wood that's at 20% moisture. That's really high. A lot of times you can get a very faded out look if you apply an oil-based product to wood that has that much moisture in it. Exposure to rain 60 minutes after absorption. That's true. Almost all the products we use are rain safe. We say 2 hours. That's the window we want to see of no rain after the oil's been applied to the wood. But they put 60 minutes on their can. That's legit. All right, can be applied in direct sun in the heat of the day. Also true. If you're using a product that is not curing, it's not going to form this wax on the surface, or solids that have latexes, acrylics in them. When you apply an oil in the hot sun, what'll happen is, essentially what's going to happen is you're going to have to put more product down. The wood is going to just absorb it really quick. So to make sure that you don't run into any issues, you just got to put a flood coat down. You got to put the oil down so thick that the wood can't soak it up super fast. But there isn't really flashing or things like that. You can run into issues when you're using high solvent products. Products with more mineral spirits can sometimes have that flashing issue. But generally, we don't run into many issues when we apply in the direct sun. If the wood is really hot, that is when you just have to make sure you're putting it on thick. You can't go light. You can't go light on a product like that. You definitely have a better result if the wood is newer. If you have very porous wood, it's going to pull the oil in really quick. The hotter it is, the more times you can run into an issue. You can even run into footprints if the wood's really hot. All right. No peeling, cracking, flashing, or shiners. I've never heard the word shiners used in the industry. Maybe that's an area where it's got a sheen. But yeah, if there's no hardeners or waxes or gels in here, there's nothing that can peel, flake, or chip. Long lasting, easy to apply, and a breeze to maintain. Man, these guys, marketing right on point. We stand behind everything Armstrong Clark says. Now, the only thing in Armstrong Clark that we aren't as big of a fan of is the linseed oil put in here. Nothing wrong with linseed oil. It's a good product to put on decks. I don't like the smell, and it can sometimes be a little fussy to work with as it has more of a drying. It can have more of a drying effect, if that makes sense. It technically falls under, if you look at non-drying oils and drying oils, linseed oil is technically classified as a drying oil. So, as far as, can you trust what it says on the can? Absolutely. Didn't think I was going to do that. Didn't think I was going to give a little shout out to Armstrong Clark. But hey, by the way, we're not sponsored by anyone. We don't take money from anyone. No one is paying us to make these videos. I wanted to present as much information as I can to homeowners and contractors to make the best decision for their customers. So for us, transparency is important, and making sure that if somebody's going to be working on your deck and you're going to be paying a lot of money for it, because this is not cheap work, at least it shouldn't be, it's really important that people are doing the right things. Something that's really important to us is understanding between water-based products and oil-based products. Let's break this down into two categories. We've got oil-based products and water-based products. Within those categories, you have a lot of options to pick from, and there's a lot of diversity within those specific products. Oil-based breaks down into two general basic categories: film-forming oils and non-film forming oils. So we're going to talk about oil-based first, then we'll talk about water-based. These are two products that are used very, very frequently. I would say they're both homeowner grade. Cabot more so has put a lot of money into their marketing, so you might see this more on the shelf at Home Depot or Menards. But you could walk into a paint store and see these two products. Both of them are oil-based. One of them is film forming, one of them is not film forming. If you put Armstrong Clark on your deck, you're in a very good place. You're in a very good position to have easy maintenance in the future. If you put Cabot on your deck, your wood is generally going to be preserved, but you're setting yourself up for a rather difficult maintenance in the future. How I classify difficult versus easy when it comes to maintenance is how much effort, time, and difficulty are you going to run into? Cabot, let's see if they have a maintenance. We could read it right off the can. That way you guys know I'm not making anything up. A lot of Spanish on here. There's a lot of good instruction on here. A lot of people freak out. Do board to board. Don't get overlap marks. You know, they try and tell you how to avoid that, but you got to think about it a lot because you can run into that issue with these products. Okay, I don't see anything on maintenance on here, which is a little disappointing because it is important for homeowners to know what maintenance is going to look like in the future if this is the product they're going to pick. There's no information on maintenance on here, which I would say is the first red flag of a product. If they don't tell you how to maintain what you're going to be putting on your deck, there's a good chance it's going to be difficult or cause a headache. It does say to only apply one coat. A lot of people will be like, apply 2 coats, apply 3 coats. Okay. So when it comes to reapplication, you need to strip this back or you need to reapply. You need to strip it off chemically or you need to sand this off before you put a maintenance coat on. The reason being, if you get something to chip off on this piece of wood, maybe I can insert a video. I have so many examples of what this looks like. Film forming products are going to sit right on the very surface. This is the Cabot stain right here. It's going to sit right on the surface. When it starts to flake off or chip off, because there's a film there, it's something sitting right on the surface. When you go to reapply, you're going to see exactly where the old chipping and peeling was, because when you put that new coat over top, you're going to see you'll see a little bit of a difference in texture, and then you also notice one area has 1 coat and one area has 2 coats of stain. My opinion, for whatever it's worth, I don't think that looks good. And you run into even more issues when you have to do it again in the future. And then you have some areas of the deck that have 3 coats and some areas that have 1 coat. And it's not like you can go in there with a tiny little toothbrush. I mean, you could go in there with a tiny little toothbrush and just fill in the areas it's flaking off. But that, to me, equates to difficult maintenance. Number 1 reason why we avoid film forming products, difficult maintenance. And that, you know, it doesn't matter if it's water-based or oil-based, it still can have a film on it. The best way to avoid a product that has a film is find one that advertises no chipping, peeling, or flaking. Because Cabot, they're vague on their marketing. You know, they put these things like lifetime guarantee, that catches your eye. Hides some wood grain, forms a strong weather barrier. Now, they use a little bit of a play on words. They say prevents premature aging, cracking, warping, peeling, and graying. I'm not totally sure what that means because it sounds like they're kind of talking about the wood. It's preventing the wood from cracking and warping. But then they put the word peeling and graying in there. Peeling would be something the product does. Wood doesn't peel if there's no product on it. So they're throwing that peeling word in there as if it's something the wood's going to do, because the 3 other ways they describe this, as far as cracking, warping, and graying, those are things that the wood's going to do. Peeling is something a product would do. So I don't know if they're trying to do this play on words. They're trying to, you know, it's all marketing. People are trying to sell you their product, and that's just how the game is played. So, you know, some circumstances, yep, go ahead, use this product. We're not going to use it as a company. We're going to stick with a non-film forming product. The other side of the category is going to be non-film forming products like Armstrong Clark, Expert Stain Seal, Wood Defender. You know, we like going this route. When it comes to maintenance on a product like this, non-film forming oils, it's just going to be applying oil right over top of what you got. No sanding, no stripping of the previous product. Way less work, way less of a headache. When you're finished, you have a nice uniform looking deck or fence. So ultimately, it's just the way to go if you're thinking about the future. Now, let's dive into a little bit of water-based products, because oil-based I could talk about forever. And I mean, even if you use a Cabot, you're still way better off than throwing a water-based product on your deck or fence. So let's put these over here. And now we're just gonna do a quick little brief overview of water-based products. With water-based products, you still have transparent, semi-transparent, semi-solid, and solid stains. Similar to oil-based products, this is Wood RX. These guys are out of Florida. This technically, I mean, it's a semi-transparent. I don't know if it says it on the can. Yeah, right here, semi-transparent. So you still get to see wood grain with a water-based product. Now how this works is you have waxes, hardeners, basically a formula that's suspended in water. It's suspended in a mixture of different waxes, gels, hardeners, and pigments. And when you put that on the wood, it sits right on the surface. There's not a lot of penetration into the wood. Anything that penetrates into the wood actually is going to evaporate, leaving just your coating right on the surface. It creates a very tough bond, a shell. This is actually really awesome for anything that you're not going to walk on. It is very durable. And if you go the semi-transparent route, you do get to see wood grain. If you go the solid route or semi-solid, you start to look at products. Now this is going to be more of what you're probably used to seeing. Sherwin-Williams has these semi-transparent water-based products, and it's the same idea. You're looking at gels, waxes. They're going to be in this formula that when it gets put down on the wood, once it hardens, the water evaporates. There's really nothing in the wood to preserve it, but your protection is a barrier sitting on the surface. Same idea with solids and semi-solids, but you get a different appearance on the surface. Instead of getting to see the wood grain, it's going to have more of a paint-like finish. This is where you need to be more careful with drips, because drips will look different on the wood. But you still get to see some texture. You know, the wood is going to have different grooves in it from the wood grain. You still see that come through on the wood, unless you're putting it on extremely thick, which can be a nice appearance. But you're not actually seeing wood grain come through on any of these products. One of the benefits to a solid like this is you can go with any color you want. We've had homeowners paint their deck pink, and I thought it looked terrible, but that's what it's, you know, you have the flexibility to go with blues and to go with, you know, really, really intense reds. I don't think it's a great idea, but going with the solid stain gives you that flexibility. Typically, most solids are made up of acrylics and latexes. They're going to be what you see right on the surface. These are going to peel, these are going to chip. Solid stain and paint have an extremely similar appearance, but paint is going to be a little bit more brittle. If you ever see a deck that's looks like it's got all these jagged chips all over it, that's going to be a paint-like product, versus a stain is going to have more of a peeling effect, longer, less rigid pieces coming off. Okay, I don't need to go too much in depth with water-based. I just want to give you guys a bigger overview. The general pros and cons to water-based products are you have more flexibility on the colors you want to go with. If you're really going after a sheen finish, something that has a shine, you're going to need to go with a water-based product. So you have a little bit more upside on your variety of finishes after the deck or fence is stained. But ultimately, the cons to me outweigh the pros big time. You've got way bigger of a headache on the maintenance side of things. When things start to chip and peel and look really bad, you don't have a lot of options other than to reapply what's already on the deck. And when it comes to cost, if you're going to pay somebody to do a water-based product, most likely this is not their area of expertise. They're going to be a painter, they're going to be a fence builder, and this is not an area that they do a lot of work in. So they're going to go to the store, they're going to pick out one of these products, and they're just going to put it on your deck. Not a lot of liability, in my opinion, because a well-educated contractor is going to be able to tell you that this is not a great idea long-term on something that gets walked on or something that has the ability to move a lot, like a thinner fence picket. Okay, and you can't, yeah, and ultimately it's like you just can't change things up. Once you go water, the cost to go back to an oil is just expensive. Try not to make this mistake if you don't have to. Okay, guys, let's go over some chemical application. This is how we do it. A lot of ways you can do it. This is what we found the easiest, kind of from how we started from day one to where we've evolved now. And we apply chemical a couple different ways. Where things originated was the pump up sprayer. This thing is awesome. You can pick one of these up. They're cheap. You throw them in the trailer or the back of your truck, and you can apply any chemical, or you can apply almost all the chemicals you need to prep a deck before you stain and seal it. We always keep a bucket on the trailer, and we apply 8 ounces of cleaning or stripping powder to 1 cup of water. As a general overview, majority of projects, you're looking at 8 ounces of cleaning powder to 1 gallon of water. Now, you're going to run into a couple different chemicals that you need to use: sodium metasilicate, sodium percarbonate, and sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. We like to label our pump up sprayers with just pieces of tape. This just makes sure that we're not putting something on the deck that doesn't need to go, that's not supposed to be on the deck in that moment. When we're stripping an oil-based stain, we're going to be using sodium hydroxide. Most times it's going to be that 1 cup, 8 ounces of hydroxide to 1 gallon of water. It's going to heat up as a chemical reaction when it goes inside the pump up sprayer. So there's not a lot of mixing you need to do. Once it's good to go, you pump it up, you get it on the deck, keep it off of plants, keep it off of siding, have a hose ready, have anything ready. If you get it on something it's not supposed to be on, hose it down. If you have sensitive things in the area, get it wet before you even apply the chemical. Make sure you got pants on, you got gloves on, a respirator, do all the PPE stuff. But for chemical application, the pump up sprayer is what we're going to use for deck stripping because we have the most control over where the chemical goes. Products you're going to need to strip are going to be oil-based, film forming products like Cabot. You can strip with this stuff. Really anything oil-based, it's going to go after it pretty well. When it comes to just cleaning, we also use a pump-up sprayer, but we've now moved to something that's a little bit more efficient. That's going to be a 12-volt system or an X-Jet. The 12-volt system, you have the ability to buy something from a hardware store. They come in a lot of shapes and sizes. They're built for general use. So we like to build out our own 12-volt systems and kind of make them customized to how we're going to use them. We have a bucket spray lid that I'm going to make a video on how to build a bucket lid sprayer, 12-volt bucket lid sprayer. This is another version of something we've done. It's the same concept, same build. The 12-volt allows you to apply more chemical and move quite a bit quicker. So we'll use this for our sodium metasilicate and our oxalic acid application. Its general overview use is having a source of power. For us, it's a 12-volt battery. For us, it's a Milwaukee battery. And the components are actually really simple. It's a converter to get the power to our pump, wired up with this little red guy in here. If you can see it, that's where the battery slides in. And then once you got power, you just have a pump in here. And these, if they go bad, they're easy to replace. And then you have some tubes getting where the chemical is going to come in and where the chemical is going to go out. We typically mix our chemical in a 5-gallon bucket. We get our drop hose. There's like a little connection here for when you drop it in, a PVC pipe. This guy's going to go inside your 5-gallon bucket. And then once your pump is primed, you can flip your switch on, you get your pump primed, and then you have the ability to apply on the go. Make sure you have enough hose so you can reach the whole deck, but you're just applying this real quick. And we'll have some demos on how we use this. It's super simple. We like to put quick connects on everything. So if we need to switch out hoses or we're traveling for transportation reasons, we just like to have quick connects on everything. So when we do a quick connect, we also put a valve on here just so if there's chemical in the hose, it's not spilling everywhere. But the 12-volt was our big game changer when it came to applying chemicals. We used to spend anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes applying chemicals to a deck, larger decks, and we could cut that down to like 5 to 10 minutes. And when you're applying chemical twice, once the cleaner and once as a neutralizer, That's a lot of time you're cutting out. The reason we picked a Milwaukee case to do this as well is because it keeps our components clean. You'll notice with the bucket spray lid, everything's exposed. So if the chemicals you're spraying catch in the wind and they're hitting the top, it's going to start to erode all of your components. So we built this just to keep things a little bit more protected. It's not as practical as a bucket spray lid, but it works really well for us on decks. Another way we apply chemical is downstreaming through our pressure washer. That is an extremely popular way to apply bleach, and pressure wash companies do it that way. So if you're interested in something like that, just go find a pressure wash company that talks about downstreaming. Those guys are experts. We do it. We know how to do it. We don't do anything different or anything special. Another form of application is going to be the X-Jet system. This is going to be a 5-gallon jug. This has got white tape on it because we use this for all of our neutralizing. This is the best method to apply chemical for fence washing. You could argue that downstreaming from a pressure washer is also good. You can't get quite as good of concentration of chemical when you downstream. So this allows for a 2-to-1 application. So when we're applying chemical through here, we double our concentration. So we're doing 2 cups of chemical to every gallon of water. When it's all mixed up and it starts being put on the fence, it's mixing with the pressure wash, the water going through the pressure washer, and it dilutes close to a 2-to-1 ratio. So by the time it's actually hitting the fence, it's the right ratio we want for cleaning. Most fences that have grayed and weathered are going to get this type of treatment to prep them before being stained. Now we like quick connects, as I said before, so we'll have a couple buckets out, neutralizers, cleaners, and when it's time to switch over, instead of going through all the hassle, I mean, you can have a dipstick that you just move from bucket to bucket. We don't really like the idea of chemical, kind of being a little bit more, a little less control of where the chemical's going. So we like these quick connects. We'll just pop them out, put them on the next bucket, just to keep things efficient, keep things moving. And then just so you guys can see it, this side is what actually goes on the pressure washer. At the end of your pressure washer, you put this guy here, you open your valve, just through pressure. You're gonna get suction through the hose that's gonna pull your chemical out. And whatever you're trying to put on the fence, it's gonna come through this hose and start hitting the fence. So same thing here, make sure you guys got a respirator on, any glasses. This stuff does go up into the air into a mist, so you don't want it getting on your skin. But this is gonna be our general approach whenever we're gonna be washing a fence. We can get chemical way quicker on a fence using this system than a pump-up sprayer. How long should I wait to stain my deck? One of the most popular and most common questions we get asked as a company that actually has a really simple answer. A lot of people will tell you to wait, let the wood weather, and a lot of people will say it's good to go right now. It can be hard to find good information on knowing when your deck is ready for a stain and seal. But in general, the only thing you're really needing to look for is the right moisture content in the wood. Armstrong Clark says you can apply a sealer at 20% moisture. Other products recommend closer to a 15%. And that's generally the only criteria for knowing when to apply a sealer to your deck. Now, the longer you wait, the more wood grain opens up, meaning the more oil can actually penetrate the wood and preserve it. But you do run the risk of cracking, warping, and twisting. And I know, everyone knows this. This is important. Wood is not what it used to be. And I hear this a lot from older generations, and I see it myself. I go on decks 20, 30 years old, and it is not like the wood that we put on the decks now. We used to use thicker boards. I'm sure all of you are aware of what a true 2x4 used to be, and everything's getting trimmed down. Everything's growing faster, and it's kind of a new game we're playing now. Kind of the standard that everyone will tell you is wait a year and let it weather. The big push behind that is the pressure treated lumber that was getting put on decks took a long time to off gas, and the wood was retaining a lot more moisture than people realized. Now, with all the regulations, a lot of the pressure treated lumber can be stained right away as long as it's dry. The biggest obstacle you're going to run into is when your deck or fence is first put up. If it's pine, it's bright green. It's bright yellow. It's bright yellow or bright green. Either you're seeing the copper from the treatment show through, or you're just seeing really nice new wood. Our company is going to recommend you wait a couple weeks because you do want that wood grain to open up. But you don't want to wait that full year, because when you wait that full year, you're susceptible to that pine cracking and cupping. And this is inevitable. Wood right now, if you're getting any sort of wood fence or deck put up, this is going to happen. There's no way around it. When it first goes up, it's going to look like this. It's going to look probably a little bit more yellow. It's a nice new board. You can hardly even see the color I put on there because the wood is just so vibrant. But the biggest reason on what we tell homeowners not to wait is because if you don't want to deal with this is irreversible. Once it starts to crack like this, there's nothing you can do to the wood to bring it back to a clean look. Now, the downsides of staining too early are you don't get a lot of oil penetration, and the pigment doesn't have much to bond to on the surface because of that. So a lot of times when we put an oil on a new deck, you're probably looking at putting another coat down in a year. The upside is you're not going to get this cracking look. And when you go to reapply, that next coat, the wood grain will continue to open up, and that next coat will penetrate even deeper into the wood and last longer than the previous coat. In some ways, you can view it as this is right off the bat, get oil in the wood, keep it preserved from going like this. But as far as appearance goes, over time, the wood's going to be able to absorb more oil and take a more color a color that you're going after. It's not really worth overcomplicating or overthinking this. The sooner you can get oil in the wood, the better. Make sure the wood is under 15% moisture so it can actually absorb the oil. But if you wait too long, you're dealing with irreversible consequences that ultimately don't look good. And no, you can't sand this out. If you look at these cracks, they're going all the way through the board. And this is a board we pulled off a deck, 1 year old, on a brand new build in a Viridian neighborhood. And this is just what they do. Now, I wish I had a better explanation on why the wood wants to crack and cup like this. You know, when possible, get oil on that wood as soon as possible. This is a good example of how your wood would look if you stain it pretty new. It's going to show a lot more wood grain. It's not going to look like a heavy pigmented stain. It doesn't even look like much is there. But the important thing is you're getting oil on that surface. And what the oil is ultimately going to do, it's going to condition the wood and not allow for that rapid moisture evaporation. One way to think about it is I left these papers out in the rain last night. And once paper gets wet and dries, it's never going to look the same. It's never going to hold its same form. All these pieces are now crinkled up. And even if I let it dry, they're still going to be crinkled up. Same idea is happening with this wood. It's getting wet and it's drying out, and it's getting wet and it's drying out. And all of a sudden, it's got that crinkled appearance to it that no matter what you do, it's not coming out. Now, let's just say for some reason oil got on this paper. Oil is actually not going to dry out over time. And the paper wouldn't have this crinkled appearance if it got oil on it. Even if you let it sit in the sun, it would never get crinkly. It would never crinkle up. So it's a good way to think about it with wood as well. Moisture is going to be the biggest enemy to anything on your fence or deck. Oil is going to penetrate and preserve that. And even though things can get wet, it slows that process down. Instead of water rapidly going into the wood and evaporating, it's now a very slow process, which allows the wood to keep its form and, for the most part, avoid this ugly appearance. A great question you can ask a contractor if they're going to be working on your home is, do you check moisture? Moisture is an awesome way to make sure that you know the deck is ready for oil. It's pretty simple. You buy these guys. You can just buy these guys anywhere. But you just put the little prongs in the wood. If it's not, I mean, this is bone dry. I can hardly even get these prongs in the wood. But as you know, there's some settings on here you can mess with. But as you touch it, you can see the moisture reading going up and down. It's going to be the same with wood. You get those prongs in there, and you can tell how much moisture is in it. This is reading at 15%. This sat out in the rain last night, so it's been able to dry out a little bit here as the sun has hit it this morning. Something like this is probably going to be in a similar range. Yeah, this is sitting at a 20 to 18% moisture. And the main reason for that is the more the wood weathers, the more it can hold, the more water it can hold on to. So having one of these tools is actually really important as a contractor. One, you can reassure the homeowner that you know the deck is dry instead of saying it should be dry. No, you need to know if it's dry. And two, it's a good way to make sure that if you do have issues with the deck, you can look back and say, well, we made sure the deck was the right moisture, so we know that's not the issue if an issue comes up. You know, and it's easy enough to use. Anyone can use it. Any contractor or homeowner can use it. It's just a matter of pressing it into the wood and seeing whatever reading you're getting out of here. So, do you need insurance for your company? Yes. Is this some form of insurance? Yeah. I worked for a restoration company. They had to run dehumidifiers in a room that flooded, and one of the ways that they protected themselves from being sued and a liability is they had to take pictures of their machine showing the moisture dropping over the hours, so that when they left and it said, okay, there's X amount of moisture in the room, you know, if the company came back to them and said, hey, you never got the room all cleared out, they could say, well, we took a picture at this time and this was the moisture when we left, so something else came up, we're not liable. That's a good thing to have. It's a good thing to have. And obviously you never want to put the homeowner in a situation where they feel like you did something wrong. So it's always good to have an answer and tell them about your process so they can feel better about you doing their project. All right, I think that's enough information. Moisture, moisture, moisture. Water is the thing that destroys everything. And UV. UV will destroy everything too. Overall, summary of kind of what we went over was make sure that you're picking the right product. Make sure that in the future, when you have to do this again, you don't have a headache doing it. And make sure you have simple, easy tools to tell you when the fence or deck is ready to go. All right, that's a wrap.